The second race is about to get underway here for the Nankang Tyres BMW Compact Cup. Now the sun has sadly disappeared, but better news, David May's just tipped the scales in his favour to become the leader of the Masters board so far. But Stephen Daly, bit more tension on his side, was starting second. He's going to need a good start off the line to be able to get past May and tip the scales back in his favour to become top of this weekend. Is he going to be able to outbeat Ian Jones? We'll have to wait and see. So we're going to hand it straight over to Andy McEwan up in the tower for all the action.
Thanks, Lyndsay. Well, this should be an interesting race, shouldn't it, then, with David May and Stephen Daly making up the front row. Keith Towers and Tom Griffiths are next, ahead of Mark Skeets and Matt Parks on the third row of the grid. Row 4 for Matt Flowers and Mike Doble, then David Sharp and Tim Scott-Andrews, whilst Lee Dendy Sadler and Stephen Chandler make up the sixth row of the grid. Row number 7 then for Tom Langford and Luke Browse. James Stanbury and Aaron Morgan are next, ahead of Jim Barrett and John King. The Group B cars in their second and final race of the day. The Group C cars making their first appearance on the grid today. The odd numbered grid slots, they're the Group B cars, so that we've seen out already in race 1. The even numbered grid slots are the Group C machines, making their first of 2 race starts today. So the left hand or the inside line on the grid is where we have the Group B cars that were out earlier on, hence why David May is on pole. Stephen Daly alongside, though, really could do with a victory in this one. He's just seen Ian Jones take a win in race 1. Stephen needs to get off the line first, though, and get into Old Hall Corner ahead of David May, which is not a given because David May's had a good launch as well and has the preferred inside line for Old Hall Corner. Wheel to wheel for the race lead then. Stephen Daly trying to charge right around the outside. Who comes out on top? Does everyone else get safely through? I think they will. 1 or 2 will no doubt find the grass, but actually a fairly clean start as they round Old Hall. On board with Phil Adcock there, but it's still wheel to wheel for the race lead. A bit of touch there between Stephen Daly and David May, and Daly will just ease his way through, and that was commanding stuff there from the reigning champion Stephen Daly into the lead of the race now. David May down to second, and Keith Towers in third position in the early stages, maintaining his grid position. He was 5th in his first race of the day. The leading 2, though, both wash out wide at the Island hairpin, and for a moment there it looked as though Keith Towers might have had a chance to get up the inside. He's a bit slow off the corner, though, and so actually has to turn his attention to defence rather than attack as the leading 2 break back away from him. So over Hilltop, down onto the brakes at his lot. Daly from May, from Towers the top 3. Skeets is 4th, and 5th position Matt Parks, then Tom Griffiths in 6th position. The winner at Thruxton last year, Tom Griffiths, and this is a very different circuit. Still high speed in places, but a lot tighter and a lot more technically demanding. He's still running well, though, inside the top 6. On board with Aaron Morgan, the only driver in the grid using hand controls, and if you get a look here, as you will hopefully now get a look up towards Druids Corner, we cut away from him, but it's a job to keep the car on the circuit at the best of times, especially the way in which Aaron has to drive with those hand controls. How on earth he keeps it on the island, I do not know. He has explained to me how that hand control system works, and it gave me a headache just thinking about it. So full marks to Aaron Morgan for not only keeping it on the black stuff, but actually getting more and more competitive every time we see him. The leaders, though, are putting on a pretty competitive showing here in the early stages, because as we come across the start-finish line for the first time, Stephen Daly has David May right behind him. David May applying the pressure here into Old Hall Corner, and Keith Towers in third has flicked the headlights on, so he clearly feels that he's in a position to maybe join in the fun as well. We're on board with the third place man. He has a really good exit from Old Hall Corner there, closes right in on David May. The temptation to go up the inside at Cascades would have been great, but right now Keith fairly happy with a third place that he's in, which would be his best result of the season so far. Up the gears we go then, on board with the 66 machine, heading into the Island hairpin. Keith Towers, of course, second in the Masters category in this race at the moment as well, and David May, the man right in front of him, is the class leader, so it may be the fight for second overall, but it is for the class lead, and Mark Skeets is not a million miles behind them either. He's the third of the Masters contenders. There he is in the yellow and black car, 4th in line, going with that leading trio, actually, I would say. Under braking then, top 6 really breaking away here, aren't they, with Matt Parks and Tom Griffiths, and then a slight gap back to Matt Flowers, who has had a slightly cleaner start this time round. He's avoided contact with Lee Dendy Sadler at the very least. Lee Dendy Sadler's car looked a right mess by the end of race number 1. Hopefully they've got that car patched up as well for this second encounter. Towers, though, and the gaps very much ebbing and flowing as we go around the lap here. Certain drivers seem to be better through the high-speed corners, and others maybe have an edge through the more technical sections. On the previous lap, it looked like this was the part of the circuit where Keith Towers excelled. He was able to close in on the leading 2. On this lap, though, it's Skeets that is applying the pressure to him, so Daly and May pulling away slightly. They're sort of pairing off, actually, aren't they? Because Tyres and Skeets are embroiled in their own battle for third, and then Parks and Griffiths behind have sort of detached themselves as well. So 3 pairs of cars come across the start-finish line at the end of the second lap in the same order in which they were a lap ago. But the dynamics just changing slightly within this leading group now. Under braking, not much braking done though for Old Hall Corner. Down 1 gear maybe, fling it in through the dip and then right out to the edge of the curb, but not beyond it ideally, because that is where those track limit sensors are placed that will catch you if you start using more of the Oulton Park scenery than you should be. David May then sticking with Daly here. This is really impressive stuff actually for the leading Masters contender, who got his first podium of the year in race 1 with a second place. Another second place finish here could actually put him right into championship contention, especially if he can hang on to the coattails of Stephen Daly. David is very much sort of targeting the Masters Championship this year and getting as many podiums as he can, but he's a driver who's looking for his first ever victory in the championship as well, and David May, I reckon on this sort of pace, might be able to do that before the season is out. He may even do it before this race is out, because he's very much showing that he's got every bit the pace that Stephen Daly has got. In the background, Tom Griffiths having a little lunge up the inside of Matt Parks that in the end came to nothing. Likewise, Mark Skeets forcing Keith Towers to defend his third place ever more busily. Ooh, floppy marker goes flying. That was Mark Skeets, I think, who was the culprit on that occasion. They rarely last the race distance, those plastic marker posts on the inside of Knickerbrook Corner that are there to denote the edge of the circuit, and therefore the bit of the circuit you shouldn't be using, but the drivers will use every inch available to them, and as a result, occasional contact with those marker posts is made. Right, leaders out of Druids. In the background there, that looked like Matt Parks getting 2 wheels on the grass, and so Tom Griffiths is the man maybe most likely to make a move into Lodge this time. This, along with the hairpin, is probably the best overtaking opportunity on the Oulton Park Island circuit, but I don't think anyone was able to dive up the inside there, but Griffiths is really applying the pressure and might have got alongside Parks here towards Old Hall Corner. There's a gap on the inside line. Is he alongside or not? I think he might be, and Tom Griffiths going for 5th place here. He's going to go through, so Matt Parks loses the place but tries to focus on getting better exit from the corner to maybe retaliate down at Cascades. I don't think he's going to be close enough though, so the top 4 stay in the same order, but we do have a change at the back end of the top 5 with Tom Griffiths going ahead of Matt Parks now. Nice move there for the number 16 car. Tom Griffiths had a podium as well last time out at Brands Hatch in the second race. Now here was my man of the match really in the first race. Alessandro Albano came from the back of the grid with a 10-second start penalty as well to eventually finish in 14th position. That was a mega drive from Albano. It equalled his best result from last time out. He's up the inside now of the 99 car of Phil Sharp and gains another spot there. He again had to start from the back with a 10-second delay in this race along with Craig Arkell for pre-race infringements that led to that start penalty, but Albano really rallying back nicely. I wonder whether or not he'll be able to beat that 14th place finish that he got in the first race. Out of Knickerbrook, Tom Griffiths there getting away from Matt Parks now slightly. It's been a slightly enigmatic start to the season for Matt Parks, hasn't it? We know that he's got race-winning pace. He got that victory, the first victory, off at Snetterton last year in that sensational race he had with Stephen Daly, but there, the man in 6th place just behind this man, Tom Griffiths, just not really having things his own way thus far in the season. A 6th and a 5th place at Brands Hatch were decent results, but arguably not the sort of points that he was expecting to be scoring early doors, and he's back in 6th place again now. And when you see the likes of Stephen Daly and Ian Jones scoring race wins and podiums with the regularity in which they do, you know, you have to be doing that as well if you want to challenge them for the title. So Matt Parks will be looking to try and find some improvements, if at all possible, through this middle portion of the season. Oops, Keith Towers using all of the curb on the inside of Old Hall Corner there. Drops down the hill again through Denton's, the right-hand kink, and then hard on the brakes, that big drop in the road as you turn in. Really unsettles the car. There's Aaron Morgan, who's he got to play with in this race, I wonder. He's on the attack here, certainly, as they come out of Old Hall, down the avenue, excuse me. And Aaron Morgan in the Allied Mobility liveried car, looking racy here. The car he's racing with is Luke Browse, the 84, who's having tuition this season from runner-up in the TCR UK Championship last year, Ollie Taylor, who's attending all of the rounds with Luke. They're good pals, they live local to each other, and they are... there are worse people you can get in tuition from, certainly aren't there? Ollie Taylor had some success here at Oulton Park last year in TCR and raced in Caterhams in the past as well. And Luke definitely benefiting from that. On board with Aaron Morgan though as he chases him down. Down the hill they come. Mike Doble there, the blue car at the head of this little queue. And there, the yellow number 77 car is Stephen Chandler, whose original car was written off at Brands Hatch after a nasty shunt. They've rebuilt a new car. They got it ready just before they left for Oulton Park, arrived here, and were then astonished to find that everyone else had spent that day testing. So Stephen Chandler actually doing really well to be just on the fringes of the top 10 here at a circuit which he has not tested yet. He's driven here before in front-wheel drive machinery, never in a rear-wheel drive car such as the BMW Compact. So keep an eye on Stephen Chandler. If he can go this well in his first race, his second race later on could see even further improvements. Another yellow car there, running a bit further up the order in fourth place is Mark Skeets, but he's dropped away from Keith Towers now, hasn't he? Towers sort of on his own now in third, and it's really the fight for fourth that's developing nicely between the charging Tom Griffiths and the slightly fading Mark Skeets. Back with Towers, though, who's got this grandstand view of the leading two, who are threatening action, aren't they? Stephen Daly and David May. They've sort of been within a few car lengths of each other since the drop of the green flag, but having got through at this corner on the opening lap, Cascades, Stephen Daly has really not looked back too much, hasn't really felt the need to defend too much from David May. And as a result, David hasn't really been able to challenge, but there's a big old lock-up up in front there for Stephen Daly, and this is May's chance. He's up the inside line, and Stephen Daly and Keith Towers get sideways as well. There's some fluid on the circuit. I don't know what's going on there up the hairpin, but that was David May's chance to get up the inside of Stephen Daly. It didn't quite work, but that was not what Stephen was trying to do, I'm sure. This is, remember, a new car for Stephen this year. They've done some winter testing. He's going to race it a few times up at Knock Hill as well in the reinvigorated Scottish Compact Cup this season. And he's getting as much track time as he can, basically, because he is readily admitting at this stage of the season he is not as comfortable in this car as he was in his championship-winning car from 12 months ago, which is still running with the team, but no longer, of course, with Stephen at the wheel. And so as he tries to get used to this new car, maybe there are just a few handling imbalances that he's not quite on top of, and that looked as though that was one of them there down at the hairpin, which nearly cost him the race lead. Back with Keith Towers, though, who had a moment all of his own as well at the hairpin, which is what led me to believe maybe there was something on the circuit that shouldn't be, but it has reignited this lead battle now. David May, you almost sense, had sort of settled for second place, and now might be regretting that, because had he been a car length closer to Stephen, he'd have probably had the race lead by now. He's right back on the rear bumper of the race leader, though, as they come across the start-finish line into the final third of the race now. And Daly very much feeling the pressure. You can see the car is a little bit more sideways than David May's. That is Stephen's natural driving style. He likes to hurl the car at the corner and hope for the best. It's all very calculated, of course, but some drivers just have that slightly looser driving style down, and that very much is how Stephen tends to drive this, or used to drive his old car anyway, trying to do the same sort of things with the new one, and it's maybe not reacting quite the same way. David May, though, we're looking to try and attack again down at the hairpin. We've got on board with Keith Towers again in third. Up in front of him, do we see another lock-up for Daly? Not this time, and he keeps it much tighter to the apex as well. He was probably a fraction earlier on the brakes, just in case, on that occasion up at the hairpin, and so no way through for David May just yet. Keith Towers struggling to get the car into gear a little bit there, I think, as he came over hilltop. And you can see that moment a lap ago for him has brought Mark Skeets and Tom Griffiths a little bit closer to him as well. Daly, though, KC Motorsport squad, who travel, well, I bet they don't even like to think about the miles that they travel to go racing in the Compact Cup. But this, he's been doing it for a few seasons now, of course, with much success right from the word go. And it's well worth the efforts, because he is one of the fastest drivers in the championship. Now, Aaron Morgan in strife, because the car has slowed. He's going to have to pull off onto the Foster's cut-through. And unfortunately, something has gone wrong for the Andy Waters prepared Raw Motorsport machine, and he will be out of the race. That's a real shame for Aaron. He was running in about 15th place, I believe, having a nice battle with Luke Browse. Unfortunately, Aaron out of the race. That's a real disappointment. He will, though, get to watch from the sidelines now and enjoy this battle between Stephen Daly and David May, which refuses to die completely. David very much keeping tabs on the Scotsman in front. Keith Towers in third is fading ever further away from them, and therefore further into the clutches, and Mark Skeets and Tom Griffiths behind. There's Stephen Chandler, the yellow machine. Luke Browse is now ahead of Tim Scott Andrews, actually, so Luke Browse there, who was dicing with Aaron Morgan earlier on, has now actually gained a position anyway at the expense of Tim Scott Andrews. So sort of shuffling just outside the top 10 this. I think Luke Browse is into about 11th or 12th position now. Stephen Chandler just in front of him, looking for what would be his second top 10, because he was 9th in the second race last time out. That's Jason Bagley in the novice crossed number 13 machine, and Phil Adcock we're on board with now. Now, remember when Dave Chapman was in this car at Brands Hatch last time out, and he had that gear lever fall off in his hand coming on to the final lap. Well, on the very first lap of testing this weekend, exactly the same thing happened to Phil, so they'll have super glued it on now, I'm sure, with the strongest adhesive they can find, and touch wood, things seem to be okay for Phil in this, his second race and therefore final race of the day. But Phil Hancock, a real character, really enjoys his racing, and it doesn't really seem to mind where he finishes within reason. Obviously wants to do as well as he can, but just really enjoys his racing and really enjoyed seeing that car go so well in David Chapman's hands at Brands Hatch last time out. Phil racing just outside the top 20 here at Oulton Park. His pace improving though. Turns through the hairpin. That looks like it's Phil Sharp in the blue number 99 car just up the road. Back up the gears again. Over the hill he goes, down the gears go the leading two because they're approaching Lodge Corner with still David May within striking distance of Stephen Daly. I think that mistake that Stephen made earlier on has probably woken David up now to the possibility that if he stays close enough, he might be able to take advantage of another mistake should it come. We're on to the final lap now though, so is there going to be another mistake from Stephen Daly, and can David May get close enough to force that mistake out of him? It's very hard work at the wheel of the 66 car for Keith Towers. He was all arms and elbows there as he went through Old Hall Corner, down the hill through Cascades go the leading two. Stephen Daly really needs this race victory. His early season title protagonist definitely appears to be Ian Jones, and Ian has won 3 races from 3 so far this year. Stephen won one of his races at Brands Hatch, but was only second in the other. And he doesn't have the fastest lap in this race either. This man does. Keith Towers set the fastest lap on lap number 4, so it doesn't look as though he's going to get the maximum points for this one. Will though be the race victory, which is the main thing I guess for Stephen Daly. That's worth 50 points, a bonus point available for fastest lap. Of course, Ian Jones did not get the fastest lap point earlier on either. Phil Sharp with an audacious manoeuvre attempted up the inside of Jason Bagley there at Old Hall Corner. Didn't work though, backed out of it in the end, possibly sensibly so as to avoid contact. But yeah, KC Motorsport car of Stephen Daly now only a couple of corners away from what is actually looking like a slightly more secure victory now. I think David May have finally accepted defeat and backed out of any potential challenge for the victory here. He'll be really happy with 2 second place finishes, which should provisionally at least put him 3rd in the championship. It will sort of revolve around what Ben Huntley does in his final race later on, but the fight between David and Ben, they were 4 points apart coming into this race, so if Ben can't improve upon 3rd place in his race, then I reckon second place, excuse me, then I reckon that David May might go ahead of him in the championship. But Stephen Daly will be 2nd in the championship, we know that, going into the final race of the day, because he is going to take the victory in race number 2 here at Oulton Park. The checkered flag for the KC Motorsport squad, and a really hard fought victory. That David May in 2nd pushed him hard all the way, and Keith Towers gets himself another podium finish, his 1st of the year though. Daly, May and Towers the top 3, with Skeets and Griffiths in 4th and 5th, excuse me. Matt Parks, Matt Flowers, David Sharp, Mike Doble and Stephen Chandler. Great result there and great reward for the team and his dad, who helped him rebuild that car with a top 10 finish. Luke Browse is 11th ahead of Tim Scott Andrews, Jim Barrett. Alessandro Albano, another 14th place finish. That's his 3rd 14th place finish of the year, whilst Aaron Morgan was a non-finisher, and Tom Langford, unfortunately, having been a late retirement in race 1, is a non-starter for the 2nd race.
Stephen, fantastic comeback for you.
Yeah, I mean that's a good race. David May pushed me from start to finish really. I managed to get the jump, and that was always the plan, was to get the jump on David, because I knew it'd be very, very tough to overtake. So, and it is a tough overtaking track, so I knew if I got in front, David was going to struggle. So it was a case of getting in front, tried to manage my tyres, but to be fair, I made quite a few mistakes out there and opened it up to David quite a few times. And you know what, I thought I was going to lose it a few times. So I mean, we're quite happy with the result.
So the car's feeling much better?
Yeah, the car's feeling fantastic. A couple of little adjustments, struggling with the front brakes, but I mean, everybody's struggling with the front brakes out there, so we're just got to see how it goes. Ian Jones in the next race, so we'll see how that goes.
Brilliant, we'll wish you the best of luck. Thanks so much, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
David, back on podium, 2nd time in a row.
I'm getting used to this. I like it, yes. Lost the pole, obviously, lost it to Stephen, but I knew that was inevitable anyway. You know, he was going to get me somewhere. Decided to just jump on his back end, pull me around a bit, try and get a bit of a gap from Keith, because Keith, he's there everywhere, and I could see a bit of a gap. I made a couple of silly little mistakes, which dropped me back a couple of car lengths from Stephen. Then Stephen locked up down a hairpin, and if I'd have had 1 car length, I'd have been in front. Not for long, but I'd have been in front for a bit. But what a perfect weekend for me. Brilliant.
So first podium ever, you must be over the moon.
I'm absolutely thrilled. It's one of the objectives for the season. I've got a little objective list and this is another one ticked off, so I'm absolutely ecstatic.
Do you think you might have had David May, or if you had a few more laps left in you?
No, I think at the start I was a little bit quicker, 1 or 2 laps in, I was nudging them into Cascades, and then they just pulled a little gap. I mean, it was more a case of keeping Mark Skeets behind me and keeping the gap, so they just got a little bit too much on me, but I think I had the fastest lap, so I had the pace.